They paved over a wet place and called it progress. They drew white lines on top of mud and sold it as convenience. And the whole neighborhood applauded like it was a parade. That was the hook. That was the lie. My name is Ethan Cole. I'd been doing environmental consulting long enough to know when a map was a promise and when it was a threat. And I'll tell you, the only thing worse than a bad plan is a polite crowd that wants it. This is the story of Maple Hollow, how a little road turned into a dam, how the people who wanted to profit from control learned that water keeps its own score, and how for a while, everything I thought I knew about neighbors changed. Maple Hollow looks the way a postcard would if the photographer was sentimental about clapboard houses and porches, but walk 5 minutes off the pavement and the ground changes cattails, a channel the old-timers called the backbone, frogs that sing like someone tuning an instrument. I grew up near places like that. I believed in property rights, sure, but I also believe the land answers when you push it, and if you don't listen, it tells you loudly. Enter Marjorie Blake, HOA president, real estate smile, a voice trained to sound like investment advice. Marjorie and her husband Sam run a contracting company, so when she said, "We need a connector road," what came next wasn't town planning, it was a sales pitch, and it worked because it had a nice brochure. They pitched property value, easier trash pickup, faster commutes. Nobody mentioned that the shortest route happened to cut across the marsh. Nobody mentioned permits until after the asphalt was down, and when people asked about wetlands, she shrugged and said, "That's just soggy land. Ethan, you make a career out of bogs." I tried talking, at first quietly, like you do with neighbors over coffee at the hardware store. "We've got protections on that basin," I said. "There's a drainage channel you're about to block." She smiled and did that thing people do when they're practiced at turning the room. "We have the board's approval." They painted a few stakes, printed a lame-sounding resolution, and the machines showed up one Tuesday at dawn. Watching a bulldozer eat a reed is a small, personal grief you can't explain unless you've watched it. They roar, the earth shudders, and the first trees go sideways like they decided to lie down. I filmed everything, because that's what you do when you know the truth might be disputed. Timestamp, drone, GPS waypoints, everything with a timestamp so later no one can say it wasn't like that. Roy, an old neighbor who'd lived here 50 years, stood with me on his porch and spat tobacco. "They don't care what lives there, Ethan," he said. "They just want their damn road." The HOA had posters, cute graphics, a barbecue ribbon cutting when the road was finished, a neat black line on top of a filled basin, little culverts poking through like afterthoughts. Sam bragged about the grade. Marjorie waved a scissors. People clapped. I remember standing at the edge of that new road, the asphalt warm in my hands, and feeling the hair on my neck go up. They'd installed culverts, sure, but they were set high, the wrong height, and the fill was packed like a levee. It wasn't ignorance, it smelled like shortcuts. So I did what you'd expect. I filed complaints, I sent emails, I called the county, I called the Corps, a bureaucratic chorus of phone holds and polite-sounding investigators who use big words and then sometimes move slowly. Marjorie answered with flyers, a smear campaign. "Ethan resists progress. He's trying to sabotage our neighborhood." She made it personal, because that's effective. If you make the messenger the problem, the message gets ignored. People started looking at me like I'd ruined their picnic. Mid-spring, clouds that didn't care much about HOA meetings rolled in, and the weather turned from a rumor into a thing with teeth. Rain, then more rain, the kind that builds its own patience, the kind that keeps showing up until the land has to respond. I stood by the backbone watching the water rise under the new road and thought, this will not negotiate. I took pictures of the culvert mouths, I logged the water level. I called Linda Park County engineer, no nonsense, and she said words that made my stomach drop. Those culverts are undersized and placed incorrectly. They created a retention basin. Legal speak for you made a dam. The night before the breach, I didn't sleep. I put out sandbags. I waded through mud to clear little channels the way my dad taught me, because you do what you can. Marjorie left a voicemail that sounded almost conciliatory. "Ethan, you're being dramatic," she said. "Calm down." Sam drove by in the truck as the rain got heavier, leaned his head out the window, and shouted something I couldn't hear. I think it was a taunt. I think it was, "You'll thank us when the value goes up." Value, in that moment, felt small. Then it failed. Asphalt isn't invincible, and water has patience the rest of us don't. The seam along the road started to unzip, and for a few seconds they felt like forever. The neighborhood held its breath. Then the road gave way like a cracked jaw, and a river poured through where the asphalt had been, brown and angry, and taking everything with it. Mailboxes tumbled like toothpicks, a porch that had been a prideful addition slipped and did a little twist, a car floated sideways and gently, horrifyingly, stopped against a tree. I remember the sound first, not thunder, but the low, hydraulic groan of water moving with intent, then the chaos. Shouting, a dog bark, the smell of diesel and wet earth. I lashed a rope to my truck and threaded it across a porch roof. And when I got to Marjorie's place, she was on her front deck, mud up to the steps, hair plastered to her head, eyes large and human in a way articles never made her. She tried the old lines, the practiced indignance, "This is an emergency," and I snapped a rope over her waist and pulled. "You built it, you get through it," I said, and there was no time for anything else. We pulled more people, strangers and neighbors, hands slick and raw, and for a few hours the whole town felt like a raft crew working, scared, quietly heroic. Nobody asked 2 years ago who was right. In the water, that question was silly. You save people or you watch them go. When the storm left and the water settled, the damage was there like a map of mistakes. Broken culverts, silted lawns, a clubhouse with one wall missing like a stage where the finale had been improvised. After the adrenaline, the county came in, and Linda's report read like a ledger. Illegal fill, falsified elevation reports, failure to get appropriate permits. The insurance companies squinted and denied coverage for acts of negligence. Lawsuits stacked like unreadable bricks, and the press had its field day with the photo of Marjorie at her roofline with water gnawing at her porch. The smile was gone. Marjorie and Sam faced fines. Their contracting license got a review, and the HOA board was disbanded under pressure. People cheered for a minute, then started arguing about who deserved blame, who should pay, how to rebuild. What surprised me wasn't the outrage. It was how quickly people split into teams: justice and vengeance. Our cousins, some wanted criminal charges, others wanted restorative work, a big public project to put the backbone back the way it was. Roy wanted a lawsuit and a wall of retribution. Linda wanted a restoration plan and native plantings. The county wanted code compliance and indictments. And the community, exhausted, wanted its porches back. There was truth in all of it, and none of it made the crocuses come back any quicker. Here's the thing that kept me up after the cameras left. This wasn't just greed or a glossy brochure, it was a mindset. Marjorie believed she was improving things. She'd convinced herself the ends justified the shortcuts, and plenty of neighbors wanted to believe her because improvement feels like validation. That's how policy becomes harm, when the language of betterment hides a shortcut over a living system. And so we rebuilt, but not with asphalt over reeds. We tore the road out, restored the channel, planted willows, built a raised boardwalk on pilings so people could walk and remember without disturbing drainage. And we rewrote the bylaws so one person couldn't call something a project and get a bulldozer. In the end, what I learned is this: you can measure damage in dollars and fines. Yes, but there's a quieter measure. The things we let go of when we choose convenience over care, the neighbors we stop trusting, the little rituals: morning coffee on a porch that get reshaped into conversations about liability. Marjorie lost power, yes, but she also lost the simple thing that's hard to price: the right to define her neighbors' lives without consent. I kept my files, my timestamps, and an uneasy feeling that if we don't change the way we decide, someone else will try the same shortcut. So I'll leave you with this: when someone tells you a change is for everyone's good, look where the bulldozer's going to go, ask who benefits if the maps get moved, and listen to the land, because sometimes the land has more sense than the meeting room. Tell me what you think. Was Marjorie a villain or a symptom? Did the neighbors betray each other, or just follow the path of least resistance? And what would you have done if that road ran past your house? Drop your take below. Tell me where you stand on justice versus restoration. And if you've ever seen a small decision turn into a big disaster, I want to hear it. Seriously, tell the story, because this is how communities learn.